Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Holly Barker Flynn. I am the Director of Alumni Programs here with the Alumni Association. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to our speaker today. Carolyn Melkonian, class of 86, is joining us today. She is here with over 20 years experience doing negotiations and mediations and is going to share her knowledge with us on how to unlock difficult conversations. I know that this is something I've been looking forward to, and based on the number of people who have registered, it seems like this is a topic that's resonated with many of you. So without further ado, Caroline, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Holly, and welcome to my fellow Albany alum. I would like you to think about the word difficult conversations and think about how that makes you feel. What do you think? What are you thinking about when you think about a difficult conversation you have to have? So if you could put that in the chat, I'll ask Holly in a few minutes to get back to that so I can see what you thought about. But in the meantime, I'm going to just to give you a little bit of background about myself. I am a workplace and family mediator. I specialize in divorces. And prior to that, I was, as Holly said, a labor negotiator for over 20 years. So I've had a lot of experience in the conflict field, and I've learned a little bit along the way that I'm really happy to share with you. I think I have a much better handle on difficult conversations than I did earlier in my career or even a few years ago. So today, my goal is to have you leave here thinking very differently about these conversations. And I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide so that you can prepare better for your next difficult conversation. Okay. So, Holly, tell me some of the words that you are seeing in the chat. Oh, I think I might be able to see
Um, People are wondering how to keep composure and how to listen during difficult conversations. They're also interested in learning about grandparents' rights and how to deliver information um, and how someone else may not see their role or impact.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah. I often hear very similar reactions. It can make us feel fearful. There's a lot of uncertainty that goes along with having these conversations. And whenever there's uncertainty, it just increases our stress level. And when we're feeling that stress, it's really the hormones in our body kind of taking over our rational brain and causing us to react instead of act rationally. But I have a lot of good tips for you to do that. So, how many people have a difficult conversation that they are avoiding right now? Actually, I know I do. Um, I always have some, yeah.
Mhm.
Do we have a lot of hands? I can't see you guys. Um,
Yes.
I'm sure almost everybody has a difficult conversation they would like to have to have, or that they're avoiding for some reason. And and the question is, what is that costing you? Because there's many different types of costs that go along with those avoided conversations. So they could be like a delayed decision. Or maybe in the workplace, you've got folks who are just making mistakes over and over. It just keeps happening, nothing's changing. And that can cost you money. It can cost you time. There's also relationship costs. What happens to your team or your family when people aren't working well together, or where someone has a feeling and they're holding it back and there's no discussion about that? It can cause people to just act in silos, not interact with other people. And when that happens, now you're not growing as a team. You're not growing as a family. You're not thriving. You're kind of just like stunted. You're kind of just like hanging out there, right? Things are not getting better. They're not changing. It's not that great. So I'm going to give you some ideas for how to get started with that. Hold on, I got to turn over my notes here. So what we want to do is keep our brain in a rational mindset and turn these threats into opportunities. And that might sound a little like really it's an opportunity, but you'd be surprised. These difficult conversations, these incidents that happen when you have to have this conversation is really an opportunity for growth. So if we start to switch our mindset to how can we turn this into an opportunity, you'd be very surprised what can happen. So the first mindset shift is from I know how I see it. These are the facts. This is what happened, and this is what needs to happen to fix it. Let's switch that to what are the facts here? Now, when I was a young negotiator, I was very surprised to learn that other people saw things differently than me. I was certain that I could see what happened. I knew it. Here were the facts. I've gathered my information. But every single time, people would come back with a different set of facts. And here's another example. One day at home, I was letting the dogs out the front door. So I opened the front door, let them out, and then I locked it. And my daughter was home, and she said, "Why are you locking the dogs out?" So, which is kind of a weird thing to say. I agree because the dogs couldn't come back in even if I hadn't locked it. But it was kind of a negative connotation about me locking the dogs out. And I said, "Well, the dogs don't always come back in through the front door. Sometimes they want to come in through the back door. And then I've left the front door unlocked and I'll totally forget about it. And I really care about my safety in the house." So that was a very different explanation. If she hadn't asked me, she would have had this negative assignment to what I had done by locking the dogs out. I was really just protecting the house. Then you need to switch from this will be uncomfortable to this will be valuable for both of us. So I have a friend who is part of a three-person team and two folks who have reached the top of their career and one person who is the assistant, and the thought is that she's going to move into that top spot when somebody retires. Now, that third person's been there for like 10 years, absolutely thinking that she's going to get that spot. But the folks at the top have tried to work with her. They don't see her as a good fit for that position. There's no path for her to that position, but they haven't told her because it's uncomfortable. So that conversation would be very valuable to her so she doesn't feel the humiliation of knowing that she's actually not going to get that job. She could have had an opportunity to leave and go somewhere else where she's better suited and happier. The team has lost out on that opportunity to put somebody else in that position and to be able to bring them up. So there's a lot of lost opportunity right there. And there's that humiliation. I mean, when you've done a bad job and no one has told you, that feels horrible. Like, and you say, well, why didn't they tell me? Then I could have changed. So we need to switch from this is uncomfortable to, hey, we need to get this information out so that we both get value out of it. The next mind shift is I need to win. And people like to win. But when somebody wins, somebody else loses. And that never feels good for the person who lost. So we need to switch away from that I need to win to we need to have some understanding here. So I have an example of this gym that I go to. And I've been going there for a long time. I really love it. It's a great community. I love the workouts. Um, and they put in place this new refund policy, this cancellation policy. It was a cancellation policy and they charged you. And I didn't like it. I was pissed. So I was like, I'm done. I'm just going to leave. Like that doesn't even make sense. That annoys me. And I had all these reasons. I was going to counter all their arguments, when I was going to talk to them and I was going to tell them, these are all the reasons why, and blah, blah, blah. And you can't look at the contract. And I had it all down because I was, like being irrational. And then as I thought about it, I was like, well, I really don't want to leave there. I really don't want to leave there. I really like it there. It's a great community. I love the people. I'm doing really well. Um, we need to have a conversation because then I can hear their side. Maybe there was a reason why they put in place this cancellation policy, and it gave them an opportunity to hear my side, like how it felt from the other side. So I came to it from a place of understanding once I got rational about it. And I'll help you get through that too. The next one is they're just difficult people. And that's an interesting place to put people who don't agree with us or don't do things the same way, right? They're just difficult, you know. Um, but usually those people are afraid of something or they're protecting something. Now, I have a great example, and this is one of the highlights actually of my career. And I'm so proud of the way that I handled this particular situation. But I had somebody on my team, and they were all new. I was much more experienced. I had a small team, and I really wanted to boost their skills so that they could take over when I left. So I brought my team with me to all the meetings that I had. I wanted them to see how I interacted with my colleagues. I wanted them to see, it was the unions. I wanted them to see that interaction. I wanted to see how I handled things, um, and learn about different topics that I knew about that they didn't necessarily know about. So I would bring one of the girls on my team, and at every meeting, she would just repeat whatever I said. And it was really, it was really weird. So if I said something, she would just say it again. And I wasn't sure what the whole point was. It didn't make any sense at all. Um, and it started to just make us look like a team that wasn't cohesive. It looked like maybe she thought I didn't know what I was talking about. And one day she did it in front of some, superiors. And I was like, okay, we're not doing that anymore. I'm just not going to bring her anymore. I'm done. I'm not bringing her anymore. Um, And then when I got rational about it, I started thinking about all the things that she did bring to that team. She was not going anywhere. She was going to be taking over someday. She had a lot of skills. She was curious. She was energetic. She had a lot of knowledge. She was a great researcher. She brought a lot to the table. So I decided I needed to have this conversation with her. And And it gave me an opportunity to really think about those things that she brought to the table. And we talked about them. Here's how valuable you are to this team, and here's what I'm noticing. And she started crying, of course, and she said, I just want to look good to you. I want you to think I did a good job. Um, which gave me a different understanding of her actions. And it also gave me an opportunity to tell her, here's what I do appreciate. Here's what I do notice that's great that I really appreciate as part of this team. And I didn't want to have this conversation, but I planned it out and I was so happy and so proud of that conversation. And it really changed the way we moved forward. So people are usually afraid of something or they're protecting something. That could be their reputation. They could be protecting their respect or their reputation. There's usually something that they're holding on to explain why they're acting in a difficult way. So before I move on, are there any questions?
So far, people are enjoying the examples that you're giving to illustrate the concepts.
Yeah, I'm hoping, is this landing well? Do people feel like, okay, I can do this. I can start to look at these in a different way?
They are for me, so I'm going to speak for the group
Okay.
collectively. And yes, we have some coming in that says um, that it is landing for them as well. I think there is some concern about what if somebody isn't receptive to the conversation or doesn't want
Mhm.
to be engaged in the process of mediation, which I I expect you'll probably get into a little bit later.
We will go into that. We will go into that. And so I'm giving you a to do, and we'll get started on that right next on how to have these conversations, even without using a mediator. So mediator, I would come in as a neutral third party, and that's perfectly appropriate for some disputes that become a little bit more. Um, but these I'm teaching you how to have these conversations so you don't have to get to mediation. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is prepare. You really like I've said to you, I got into these all these different difficult conversations that I had to have. I decided I was gonna my first instinct was avoid. I'm not gonna invite her anymore. I'm gonna quit the gym. I'm I had all these irrational thoughts. But that you got to take it down, give yourself a minute and clarify your purpose. What do you really want from this conversation? If you're looking to win or be right, we need to rethink this. But there's something that you probably want. What's your goal? Do you want the team to be working well together again? Do you want to be able to share Christmas together in a happy way? What's your goal? Then let's talk about your interests. What are your interests? What's your core concern? Is it about your reputation in the workplace? Is it about being treated fairly? Is there a certain value that you bring to the table? Is there something you value like privacy or again your reputation or your work product or there's something that's really important to you that you need to identify. And then the follow-up question is, what's their core concern? Now, it's interesting. I was just judging a competition for law students last weekend, and they were practicing their mediation skills. And the defendant was very concerned about their reputation. They wanted a non-disclosure agreement. They didn't want this information to be out in the public. And they were very nervous about how to approach that with the other side and how that would go over and how they'd be able to achieve that. But what they hadn't thought of, and I talked to them about later, was did you think about what their concerns were? Because in fact, there was a benefit and a concern to them over their reputation and their privacy. So that's something that they shared, that they kind of lost sight of. But when you can find those shared interests, it gives you something to work toward that you can work on together. And then what might they be afraid of? Again, we talked about some of those things. Could they be afraid of losing their job? Could they be afraid of not looking good to their boss? Could they be afraid that they won't get the promotion? Um, what is it that they're afraid of? Because that's a great place for you to start thinking of trying to understand the other person. And next, you need to think about what's the risk of not having this conversation? So I had a situation years ago where a very good friend of mine is like a second mother. She was having a big birthday and we were having a big party for her, and her sons were not speaking. They hadn't been speaking in like 10 years. And the only thing that she wanted was for them to both be at that party. And she just kept saying it over and over. Nobody was jumping on that train. And no, since nobody else was willing to have this conversation with the sons, I thought, well, I guess I'm going to have to do something. Because the risk of not having the conversation was that there would have been no chance that they would have come. And I think I would have been forever regretful that I hadn't tried for her. And think about why am I afraid of this conversation? I mean, I felt really awkward about this conversation because I was like calling out of nowhere, asking them if they would come to this party. Um, and I felt weird about my place in doing that. But I thought, what's the worst that can happen? They say no. They start venting to me about the other person. Okay, I can really deal with that. So think about like what are you afraid might happen and let's plan out what you will do. So what I ended up doing was I listened to both sides about their complaints about each other and then asked if there was just a little something they could do. Could you come for 10 minutes is what I asked them for. Could you do a little something? And they did. And they stayed. But again, the risk of not having that conversation was that there would have been no opportunity for them to have come. So even if they had decided not to come, I'll always know that I tried. But they did come. It was great. Um, and again, we talked about this before. What are your shared values? What are you both striving for? This is going to be the basis of your conversation. Um, maybe you work for a homeless shelter and you both really care about serving the homeless better. Maybe you are both trying to land a $50 million deal, and your shared value is we want this deal. So there's something that you are both striving for. And it's really important that you think about that before you start having this conversation. All right. So this is how we are going to start. I'm going to take you step by step now, how to start having this conversation. And I want you to start with this or something similar. I want to talk about something because of that shared value. We both care about serving the homeless as best as we can. We both really care about landing this $50 million deal. Here's what I'm noticing, and I'm curious how you see it. So if somebody said that to you, how would that land? Would you feel like there was blame? Would you feel nervous? Would you feel some sort of camaraderie there? How would you feel about that?
I think our guests are shy, but
Okay.
I but I will. Someone has said it depends on their relationship with the person. I think especially if it's in a work setting, I think my ego would be a little on guard, so I'd get a little apprehensive. A lot of people are saying that it opens the door to a conversation and that
Mhm.
they would feel respected and probably nervous, but open to hear what they would say.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you might feel a little bit like, I wonder why they want to talk to me about this. But overall, this really is a way to show respect to the other person. And it kind of is like inclusive. There's a camaraderie there. Like we both care about this, and I want to hear from you. What do you think? So it signals respect and it does open the door to conversation. So as we start to have this conversation, I'm just laughing because of course the dog needs to go out now. Um, so as we're having this conversation, you need to be curious because remember that you each have different perspectives, right? And you need to understand what the other person's perspective is. So that's going to be your goal through this conversation is to understand better. And I'm going to give you some words so that you can do that. The takeaway here is that they should be talking more than you. You're asking questions. You're trying to get more information because you're thinking about a solution. So here's some great ways that I use as a mediator to get people talking. And it's to repeat what you just heard, but in the form of a question. So if somebody says, I didn't get the email, you didn't get the email? That invites another response. Maybe the response is, "Oh, my email's been down for a week." "Oh, your email's been down for a week?" Now you've gained a lot of information about what's really going on here. So just repeat back It gives you a chance to think about solutions, think about what you're hearing. Just repeat it back, and people will keep talking. The next one is help me understand. So if someone's giving you a, an explanation and it maybe doesn't make sense to you, help me understand, which kind of goes along with my tell me more. This is my fallback for almost everything. Somebody says, oh, I guess I did miss that deadline. Well, tell me more. They'll start telling you about what happened and why and how. And that gives you information that you need to identify a solution. So now you're not blaming them, you're not attacking, you're not saying you missed a deadline. Why did you do this? You're not putting them on the defense. You're keeping them in their rational brain. Sometimes you might get somebody who's got like 10 things that are going on. Oh, well, this is happening at home and I didn't get the email and blah, blah, blah. And you're like trying to figure out where to go next in the conversation. What I try to do is filter that down, get them to think about just a small piece. And one of the phrases I use is, what's your biggest concern right now? Because clearly there's a lot going on. What's the biggest concern? Because you want to focus on one thing, and they'll usually tell you whatever the most important thing is. But again, giving you information so that you can find a solution. And you're letting them talk. You're letting them explain. You're hearing their perspective. Um, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes you don't really understand. So instead of saying you're not making any sense, what am I missing? Help me understand what I'm missing right now so that we can try to find a solution here. Hmm. Now, you might run into some what I call attempts to derail. Like, well, that's not my job. But again, you're going to fall back on that, well, tell me more. Instead of saying, yeah, it is your job. I should know, I'm your boss. Oh, tell me more. You just don't understand what I'm going through. Well, help me understand. Remember, you're going to let them talk more than you. Tears. So let's talk about tears. Very common. Um, this is a stressful time for that person too. There's something else going on, or maybe they feel embarrassed or frustrated, and they might cry, and that's okay. A lot of people will run from that, like, oh my God, I got to shut this down. No, let it come out, and your response is, I see this is upsetting. Now you've just acknowledged that feeling. That allows them to move past it. Do you want to tell me more? Okay, so don't run from the tears. You don't want it to get too much. And if it turns into a personal therapy moment, like, oh my God, I'm getting divorced and, my car died and let's acknowledge it. That sounds hard. That's all you have to say. That sounds hard. It is hard. Let's talk more about that later because you don't want to get derailed from what you really need to talk about. You just want to acknowledge what's going on and what that person has shared with you, and you'll get back to it another time. Okay. So the next piece is identifying your solutions because you're really here for a solution. You've got a goal. Remember, you thought about that goal, part of your framework, you thought about what I really want. So once you've kind of heard the other person's perspective, and maybe you've had a chance to give some of your perspective, um, well, what can we do to make this work for both of us? What can we do differently? These are all great words to get everybody thinking about a solution to this problem. How can we work better together? How can you and your next door neighbor um, get along better? What baby steps can we take? Sometimes the solution feels really overwhelming. Um, just like those two sons, my friend's two sons, they were mad at each other. I don't know what the heck had gone on, and I didn't want to know. But my question was, what little thing can we do just to get started? What baby steps can we take? And if you have something in mind that you think might work, well, what if we try XYZ? What do you think about that? Make this a shared solution when you can. And then, you want to leave there making sure everybody understands what they just agreed to. So just write it up and maybe you schedule a follow. Let's circle back in 2 weeks and see how things are going. So the goal here would be that you stay in your rational brain. The other person is still in their rational brain, and you've got a solution that you're focused on. So my question is, what's your biggest takeaway? What's the takeaway from this conversation we had today? And what questions do you have? Do you feel like you're leaving here with I mean, here's my little sheet that I put in the chat and we'll send out to you. But this is your everything that we've talked about today, your step-by-step guide to how to have these conversations, how to prepare, how to start the conversation. I reminded you about some of those curiosity questions to understand what's going on with the other person, and some questions you can ask to identify solutions, because that is your goal. You want a solution to the problem. You're having this conversation for a purpose. So, what's your biggest takeaway today, and what questions do you have?
So the first response that came in is about responding to narcissistic people who often try to derail the conversation. Do you have any tips for dealing with someone who's narcissistic?
So, well, narcissism gets, let's understand this. Narcissism gets thrown around a lot. Like everybody's being labeled as a narcissist these days. Remember that people are trying to protect something. They're trying to protect themselves, they're trying to protect their job, their income, their families, whatever it is. And that's just basic, focusing on the self is safety. Then you get the people who are narcissists. And remember, when they'll keep saying the same thing and turning it to them, and trying to derail those conversations. One thing that you can say is, what do you really want me to know? And that's what my training has led me to was, you want me to know something. You want me to know that you're a fabulous person, that you're super smart. There's something that they want you to know, and you need to acknowledge that so you can move on. If you do start getting into so let me just go back. So once you've acknowledged that, I want you to know that I did this. And you say, okay, you you did this. Circle back. What solutions do you have? What ideas for solutions do you have? So that's a good flip for the narcissist. Sometimes the narcissists are really difficult, especially in a family situation, and a mediator uh, could be very valuable.
The next question that came in is, what if the response to these questions is, I'm not changing, or some variation of it? Maybe they're not taking accountability. How do you work with that?
Well, you know what? If they, that's good to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it gives each of you more information on what's really going on. And if you've got somebody who really can't be on board, and I'm thinking about this as a workplace situation, if they can't be on board, then maybe you're not a good fit. And that's good to know.
Um, Shanti wrote in, the most difficult people for me to converse with are the ones who push for everything urgently and expect me to respond right away. leaving no time to help them understand or tell me that they are not understanding.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen that too, and it's okay to schedule time for that. So you first what you want to do is acknowledge their feelings. They're coming to you, oh my God, I've got this, I need this right away. Okay, I understand how this feels for you right now. Let's schedule a time. I mean, you're in control. Let's schedule a time when we can talk about it more thoroughly. I'm doing this right now, but I have time tomorrow. So you're put moving into a little space. So you haven't said no. You're creating a space for that conversation. And also remember when you're having the conversation with that person, if they're feeling in this excited, I don't, there's some sort of stress about they want this now. Maybe you want to find out more information. Why is this how is this a priority for you right now? Uh, is there something you want to tell me about the timing on this? So try to still engage them. You want to acknowledge, um, but you don't have to always just be responsive to that. You want to find out more information, make sure it is something that can be set aside, and then set aside a time for it. That would be my suggestion.
So what I was hearing is that it is okay to set boundaries, especially on your own time and your own, um, time to process things and
Yeah.
meet people where they're at. Do you have any suggestions when it doesn't seem that people are respectful of those boundaries?
Again, what I do tell people is to talk about, and you might want to pull in a mediator for that. Let's talk about why the boundaries exist, how they help that shared value, and why that other person, what is driving that person to push against the boundaries. And a mediator is good for that situation because we can make sure each person has really an opportunity to talk and to share. But there could be a reason why. What's driving that person to want to push those boundaries so much? What are they feeling? What are they trying to protect? What is their value and does it align with yours? So again, in a mediation setting, the mediator can pull out all that information. It may be hard in the workplace to sometimes to try to work with someone who's in that high state all the time.
So there were a few key takeaways that were mentioned in the chat. One is to make the solution a win-win for both parties.
So, there's a lot of there's a lot of the win-win is yes, you do want everybody wants to win, and you have to in your preparation figure out what a win is. So you don't want to be in a win where someone has to lose so you can win. You want a shared you want a solution that works towards your shared goal. So I agree with you. It is a win-win for everybody, but it's also a win-win for your values and for the goal that you each have.
And another one is somebody said they really like working towards a shared goal.
Oh, it's so
Um,
much easier than working towards a single goal and against somebody else's goal. It's really not hard. It's not that hard. Um, if you prepare,
mhm.
if you're prepared and you feel confident.
And sometimes that takes a shift in your own mindset.
It
You know,
absolutely does. It absolutely does because, I have a conversation I have to have, I know it has to happen and I really don't want to, but I'm going to prepare for it. Just like we went through today. How am I going to approach it? What is our shared value?